Greetings and welcome back to our Universal Canon of Literature series. This evening we're going to look at Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. He was one of my favorite authors when I was growing up in my native West Texas. And I, of course, caught every film on Treasure Island I could see. Now, Stevenson, first of all, I want to give a little cultural backdrop to this. At first glance, it seems that Stevenson has written yet another great piracy novel, a novel about pirates and the misdeeds of those involved in piracy. And indeed, he had a long wellspring of tradition from which to draw. I mean, more recently to his era, the Barbary pirates of the 16th and 17th centuries and early 18th century. Indeed, in our own day, the Barbary pirates being celebrated by the likes of Johnny Depp and his in his Pirates of the Caribbean series. But going on and on and on, back to the time of Edward Teach, also known as Blackbeard, you had Bluebeard, you had this beard, all these pirates crisscrossing the Caribbean and other nautical seaways or nautical ways of our planet, pillaging, looting, taking all the booty they could possibly get their hands on. The very phenomenon of piracy probably goes back to the beginnings of the of when the first humans figured out that they could float on water using a vessel. So it's probably a phenomenon that even goes back to the late Neolithic period, or definitely sometime in between the late Neolithic period and the Bronze Age. Textually, we have evidence of piracy going back to the ancient Egyptians, in particular the report of Wen-Amen. In classical times, perhaps the most salient one is that of the kidnapping of a very young Julius Caesar by a group of Cilician pirates, and how Caesar promised them, even though he joined in with them, he had fun with them, he was about 15 years old at the time. He basically said, after all the partying was done, guys, you kidnapped a representative of the Roman Republic, a member of the patrician class. You've done what you'll do, you'll set me free, but I guarantee that when I come back, I'm going to deal with each and every one of you according to Roman law. And showing no mercy, once he did capture them, he dispatched them quite brutally. So let's return to Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Stevenson says, and those of you who have a predilection for films the way I do, especially, suspense, adventure type flicks. For instance, the Indiana Jones saga, and I'm referring to that delicious scene in the Last Crusade, in which he says X never ever marks a spot, and then of course he is shown up in a different scene that indeed X does mark the spot for treasure. Stevenson himself once again says that he first drew a treasure map and labeled it Treasure Island, and from there was born the story of Treasure Island. When he looked at the map, the characters seemed to come to life for him, and their adventures became even more alive in his own mind. All he had to do, all that remained for him to do as a writer, was to translate what he saw in his mind, having been prompted or precipitated by that creative act of just drawing this treasure island on paper first. And then from there, the novel emerges. The story is told in the first person by a Jim Hawkins, whose mother kept an inn and who shared in the adventures from the beginning to the end of the novel. An old Captain Sea Dog comes to this peaceful inn one day, which is called the Admiral Benbow Inn. And he apparently intends to finish his life there. He hires Jim to keep a watch out for other sailors. But despite these precautions, he is hunted out and served with a black spot that means death. Jim and his mother barely escape death when Blind Pew, Black Dog, and other pirates descend on the inn in search of the Sea Dog's papers. Now things are getting really suspenseful. Jim snatches up a packet of papers to square the sailors' debt when they were forced to retreat from the inn. The packet contains a map showing the location of the pirate Flint's buried treasure, which Jim, Dr. Livesey, and Squire Trelawney determine they strike out to find. Fitting out a ship, they hire hands and set out on their adventure. Unfortunately, their crew includes one-legged Long John Silver. Now, those of you who grew up in the 80s or were old enough to remember, there was a time that in American culture, Long John Silver was a famous fast food restaurant. And of course, it drew upon that logo. And in American lore, because of the immense success of Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, anything Long John Silver automatically evokes images of a formidable renegade sea captain type. Long John Silver, a pirate also in search of the treasure here, and he brings along a number of his allies, or criminal allies are known as Confederates. Jim, hidden in an apple barrel, overhears the plans of the crew to mutiny, and he warns his comrades. The battle between the pirates and Jim's party is an exciting and bloody one, taking place both on the island and aboard ship. Jim escapes from the ship, discovers a maroon sailor, Ben Gunn, whose last name is appropriately named, but by the way, there was a famous Egyptologist, an American Egyptologist, by the name of Gunn, G-U-N-N. So no joke, this surname really exists. Ben Gunn, who was already found and cached the treasure, and finally the victors, get safely aboard the ship with the treasure. All this is told in classic prose, clear and rhythmical, that type of style, which has made Stevenson famous. I'd like to conclude with this, that piracy, although celebrated in a whimsical and dramatic style in this novel, is still with us today. For instance, just a check of the current news will show that in the past year or two, there have been problems with, for instance, the Somali pirates who hail from Somalia. And what do pirates do? They overwhelm target vessels which they think are carrying lucrative cargo, and they take command of that vessel by whatever means necessary in order to pillage and take from the cargo holds things of value, usually money, cash, gold, silver, art treasures, chattel of any kind, chattel of worth, chattel, of course, being movable property, and liquidate it in order to, expropriate or apply these funds to their next ventures. All right, this concludes our title, Treasure Island, and hopefully you'll join us for the next time when we take down from the bookshelves yet another title which could be said to comprise the universal canon of literature. Thank you, and have a good weekend.